Hey everyone, Mr. Regan here for the last question in our simulator here. And in this question, we're going to be looking at a specific collision that occurs between two sets of objects and looking to answer some questions about that collision. So let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, so in this collision, we're going to point out a few things. Number one, again, we built run, and we're currently analyzing a collision that happened between our two sets of objects here. So what you need to know is object A collided with object C, and object B collided with object D. All right, I know it doesn't necessarily say that, but that's what happened during the collision. And objects A, B, and C, so A, B, and C, all these have the same mass of 1 kilogram, and D has a mass of 2 kilograms. Now, I've kind of blocked out the data with object A and B, and I'll explain that here in a second because it's going to deal with the actual question we're asking. But here's the data you do need, and you can infer the answer to the following question on. So what we need to know is A collided with C, and when that happened, object C had a start velocity of 1, and then it had an end velocity of 4. So after A collided with C, it changed its velocity by 3. B collided with D, and when it did, D had a velocity that started at 1, and then it changed to 4.3 after the collision. So it changed by 3.33, almost completely identical, I would say. Those are nearly identical changes to the velocity. And they had the exact same start. So let's take a look at the question. Did object A or B experience a stronger force during the collision, and how do you know? So we're looking at the objects that did the colliding, not necessarily the objects that were collided with. So let's go ahead and look at our answer options for this question. So did object A or B? Well, object A and B did not experience a force during the collision, only C and D. Well, since they're the ones that had the velocity change. Answer B. Object B, because the force on object D was the strongest, therefore the force on object B was as well. So if D had the strongest force, therefore B had the strongest force. Object A and B experienced the same force. That's supposed to say force. Since objects C and D had the same velocity change. Okay, so object A and B experienced the same force since C and D had nearly identical velocity changes. So at this point, folks, go ahead and jump into your answer section. Was it A, B, or C? Put your answer there. Pause the video, obviously. I'll wait, and then we'll go over the answer. All right, let's go ahead and look at our answers. So first and foremost, let's rewind and kind of see what happened. So during our collision, you'll notice a few things. Number one, okay, our collision here and our collision here are two different forces. The forces in collision 1 were smaller than 2, so big 2 were larger than, 1. Now, if you remember, anytime we have a collision, we have forces that are going to be pushing in opposite direction, but with equal strength force. So A and B collide with the same forces in opposite directions. A and C, and then B and D do. The difference being the masses are a big factor here, folks, because object D had the same mass, or say a larger mass than object C here, okay? It's going to require more force to get that similar velocity change. So again, even though it's a collision here, okay, we need a larger force to move a larger object, okay? So when we look at our answers here, the only logical answer is B. Object B does, because D experienced the largest force. In order for B to move the same speed as C, it needs a larger force because it has a larger mass during that collision. Okay, so B is the only option. Go ahead and answer your survey question now. Call me and reach out if you have questions, or if that doesn't make sense, we'll break it down even more. Great job, and good luck in the next set of questions.